Please join me in welcoming Coach Joe Moglia.
I can't tell you how much of an honor it is for me to be here today for a handful of reasons. First, back in 2012, when I wanted to come back to football as a head college coach, there was not one football program in the nation whose university believed in me enough to give me that opportunity. Well, there was one. It was Coastal Carolina and Dr. Dave DeCenzo. So, Dr. DeCenzo, number one, thank you so much for that. And I will never forget you for that. Thank you. Secondly, today my granddaughter Cariana is graduating. 3, yeah, ooh, okay. And because of that, my family came down, so that's 3. 4, I've got several of my football players who are graduating over the span of the weekend. And 5, I really do love Coastal. And for me to be here on a day that is so significant for all of you is genuinely, honest to God, an honor for me. So with that, I thought I'd share a couple things that are a little personal with regard to the family. And first of all, Cariana loves Coastal Carolina. But when she was graduating from high school, she wasn't quite sure what she wanted to do. And she came to me and said, Grandpa, you've been in education for so long. I need some help on this. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to go. I said, Cariana, you are woman enough to be able to make this decision. You don't need any help from me. You're woman enough to figure this out. You'll be okay. But a week or 2 later, she goes back and said, Grandpa, I'm still struggling with this a little bit. I said, what are the schools? She said, well, Coastal Carolina and Boston College. Okay. I said, I'm just not sure. I said, here's what you need to do. First of all, be confident. You're woman enough to be able to handle this. So take a legal pad, put down the pluses and minuses of each school, see which one you feel best about when you go to bed. If you still feel best about that school in the morning, that's the school you should go to. But remember, be confident. You're woman enough to handle this on your own. A couple of days later, I get a call. She says, Grandpa, I did exactly what you said. I made a decision. I said, that's great, Cariana. Where are you going? She goes, Boston College. I said, oh. I said, why are you going to Boston College? She said, well, I grew up in Vermont, and Boston College is New England. I really love the change of seasons. I really like the idea that it's Boston. I like the colors up there. And I said, okay, I'm glad you thought that through. I said, have you thought about, are you aware of the fact that at Coastal, the College of Science is incredible when it comes to multiple disciplines within science? It's got the greatest marine biology program in the nation, and it is a leader in the country with regards to STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math. You aware of that? Secondly, if you take a look at Coastal Carolina's history, just over the span of the last 10 years, what Coastal has accomplished is incredible. And going forward, greatness is actually going to be part of Coastal Carolina's destiny. Oh, by the way, you're aware we've got 73 majors, we've got 66 minors, we've got 22 graduate programs, and we've got 80 partnerships with international institutions. Oh, and on top of that, we happen to have the National Baseball Championship and probably the best-looking college football coach in the nation. So, Cariana, clearly you're not woman enough to make this decision. You're going to Coastal Carolina. I want to share with you 4 principles today that have had a major impact on my life. And I think I just ask you to be open, folks, to what I'm going to talk about, because if you can embrace these, they'll have an impact on your life. It'll give you a competitive advantage in this next phase of your life. And it kind of helped lay a foundation upon which to build your own concept of leadership. To do that, I want you to understand where some of the ideas come from. First of all, I grew up in a gang area, Dyckman Street section in New York City. Mom and Dad were immigrants. Father never finished 8th grade. Mother never finished high school. I was the oldest of 5. 7 of us lived in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom apartment. 2 of my very best friends that I was with every day in grammar school got killed in high school. One died of a drug overdose. One was killed by the police robbing a liquor store. Had I not been playing high school football, I think the chance of probably 100% I would have been with a guy robbing a liquor store. When it was time for college, I already had a family. So my responsibility at the time was I had to support my wife, my first wife, who's here today, my daughter, Kelly, Kariana's mom, and I had to pay every dime of my education. But through that period, I learned a tremendous amount. And I was about your age. I learned a tremendous amount. And then on top of that, I've been able to spend over two decades in the business world and 2 decades in football and athletics and education. So these are the principles that I referenced a little while ago. Okay, the first one is the idea of standing on your own 2 feet, taking responsibility for yourself, treating others with dignity and respect, and living with the consequences of your actions. Now, I've had 3 daughters that were raised on that principle. I have a son that was raised on that principle. I've got 2 stepsons that was raised on that principle. When I began my coaching career the first time around, that was the principle we worked off. Any leadership job I ever had on Wall Street, that was the standard I expected from my leadership. And it's also the standard that Coastal Carolina's football team is actually built on. Now, we're the only team in the country. We don't have any rules, but we've got that one standard. Now, it's BAM. Now, BAM is be a man. Now, before you accuse me of sexism, remember, I got 125 guys on the football team. I've got another 25 coaches, interns, analysts that are also male. So for us, BAM, be a man, really, really mattered. But this is not about being a man, some tough macho guy. This is about a real man, a real woman, a real leader. Is truly someone that stands on their own 2 feet, takes responsibility for themselves, treats others with dignity and respect, and lives with the consequences of your actions. That's number one. That's a critical principle. Now, along that line, you've got to be aware that you don't operate in a vacuum. So there are other things going on. So what I'd like you to be aware of this morning is I want to talk a little bit about family. And I want to talk about relationship between parents and children. And it's not unusual in high school, college, for there to be some tension at home. Everybody understands that. But do we really understand that? So I want to put that in perspective. I'd ask you, how many of you, today you graduated from college? A few years ago you were graduating from high school. How many of you were smarter 4 years ago when you were graduating from high school? How many of you were wiser 4 years ago when you were graduating from high school? Now, I'm assuming all of you are going to say, well, none of us, because of what we've experienced and what we've learned over the span of the last few years. And that's true. You are smarter today, you are wiser today than what you were for 4 years because of the experience you've gone through. I'm just asking you to be open-minded and think about this for a second. Your parents, you have not been their age, but they have been your age. And at your age, they had the same issues, the same pressures, the same problems, the same challenges that you have. Whether it's tension with a teacher, with a coach, with a boyfriend, a girlfriend, your peers, alcohol, drugs, sex, whatever it might be, they have gone through that. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Everybody in this room just agreed that you were smarter and wiser today than you were 4 years ago because of that 4 years experience. But somehow, when we kind of think about the relationship between us and our parents, like, they don't quite get it. Well, I ask you to think that through. Now, I'm asking you to think that through for a couple of reasons. Not just because of your relationship now with your parents, but as you become parents and as your kids get older, you're going to go through this. And I ask you to be thinking about this. So, 3 things when there's some tension at home. The first one is exactly what I just said. Your parents have some experience in there. They have been there. They have done that. The second one, BAM, is their responsibility to raise their kids. That's their job. And third, there is nobody, I repeat, there is nobody that loves you more than your parents do. Nobody. And it's an unconditional type of love. Yeah, that parents are clapping. It's an unconditional type of love. And the only thing, as parents, we care about, we want you to be happy. We want our children to be happy. That's the only thing we care about. And because we've been there before, sometimes when we see you going down a path that maybe is going to create an obstacle for that happiness, we're probably going to say and do something about it. So when you have a little tension at home, or you have a little tension down the road in your own home, try to keep all 3 of those things in mind. Second, dedication. Now, dedication I would define as the commitment to work as hard as you possibly can to be the best you can be. Now, there's a lot of times people talk about you want to be number one, you want to be the champion, you want to be this, you want to be that. The reality is we can't control many of those things, and not that many people can be number one. So that's not the issue. That's not what anybody's asking for. That's not the principle I'm throwing at you. The principle I'm throwing at you is you work as hard as you can to be the very, very best you can. And in any walk of life that you're going down, if you want to be special in that walk of life, you got to be able to give it your best. It requires hard work. The only time success actually comes before work is actually in the dictionary. This is something that you got to go after. So, a couple of tips. If you already have a job and you want to make a difference, you want to differentiate yourself. So don't be afraid to go after it. Don't be afraid to go in early. Don't be afraid to stay late. Make sure you're asking good, thoughtful questions. Make sure you are really listening to what's going on. And remember this, when you get evaluated, it's not going to be what school you went to. It's not going to be what your degree looked like. It's going to absolutely be how you handle yourself under pressure. How you handle yourself under stress will actually be absolutely how you're evaluated later on. Now, for those of you that don't have jobs yet, you got to do your homework. You got to do your research. This is a critical thing. This is your career path. So what you want to be able to do, you really want to find the career path that you think you would be most suited for. Then you got to do your homework. Then you've got to look at what are the skill sets that are required for anybody to be really successful in a particular path. Then ask yourself if you have those skill sets. If you don't go, that's not the career for you. No matter what anybody else says. You're the one that's got to make this decision. You're the one that's got to live with this. If it is the skill sets that you have, then you got to ask yourself one more question. Is this something I could be passionate about? If the answer to that is yes, then you're going to have a competitive advantage in that specific field. And that's where you're supposed to go. But then the work only begins. You still got to get interviews. You got to handle yourself in the interviews. A lot of people think you just show up for an interview and talk about things. That's not right. That's not right. In this day and age, there's real competition for jobs. So you got to prepare for the interview. You got to be ready to go. Now we're going to role play for a second. I'm going to be the interviewer. I'm interviewing all of you for a job. And what I'm telling you is exactly the way I have interviewed people in the past. This will be probably the toughest interview any of you are going to have to go through. So, here's how it works. You walk in the office. Most of the time, people like hugging you. How was the trip in? Or you look good today, blah, blah, blah. The weather's good, blah, 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 blah. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say, hey, sit down. I'm going to give you kind of a scowl. You're going to get a little uncomfortable. Now, by the way, I want you to feel uncomfortable because I want to see how you handle yourself a little bit under pressure. All right, so I'm doing that intentionally for a reason. Not because I'm a bad guy, but because I want to see how you handle yourself. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to say, I've already read your resume. I've read it. I don't need to know anything more about your resume. Here's my question for you. I can hire anybody I want to. Tell me why I should hire you and that you're going to make a difference in our company, in our team, in our division, whatever it might be. I'm going to repeat that. I don't want to hear about your resume. I can hire anybody I want to. Why should I hire you? Now, some answers. Some of you might be good with these answers. Well, you know, I am really a hard worker. I work very hard. I get up early. I stay late. I'm a team player. I'm all those things. Well, okay, I'll stop you right there. First of all, I'll probably throw you out right then and there. Why? Because you're not differentiating yourself. How many people you think are going to say that? Everybody is. So that's not a differentiator. Okay? Here's another thing that happens sometimes. Well, you know, I was president of Phi Beta Gamma, and I played on the football team, and I received this honor when I was a junior. And I said, whoa, that's on your resume. I just told you, I've already read your resume. I don't want to hear about your resume. And that tells me you don't listen. You get out of here too. So now, the two of you that are left, here's the answer. Remember we said you've done your homework to take a look at the skill sets that are required in a particular field? You demonstrate that you're the one that has those skill sets. And if you can, honest to God, answer that question the way I'm asking it, the probability is phenomenal that you are going to get that job. And by the way, you're not going to go through an interview tougher than the one we just role played here. All right, next point, third principle, courage. I define courage as the guts to do what you believe is right. Now, we tend to live in a pretty litigious society. Legal's all over the place, compliance all over the place. There are so many rule books. There are so many things we're supposed to do. And sometimes we get a little obsessed with every I dotted, T crossed. And we don't want to break any rules. Now, let me be clear. No one should ever break a rule. That should never happen. But if you're afraid to do something because you're afraid that you're going to be breaking some rule, you're never going to accomplish greatness. It's just not going to happen. So you got to push the envelope a little bit. You got to go after a little bit. Again, you never cross the line, but you give it everything you have. And it's not the letter of the law. It's the spirit of the law. And I don't care how many rules there are. They get more complex. You got to go sometimes to a lawyer, your compliance people, just to find out, well, I don't quite understand this rule. Well, you know what? It's a lot simpler than that. It's truly, genuinely a lot simpler than that. In terms of your courage to do the right thing, first of all, the golden rule always applies. You treat others the way you want to be treated yourself. Secondly, all these rules, you know what's right, you know what's wrong. We all know what's right. We all know what's wrong. So courage, you have the guts to do what you believe is right. So, for those of you that are here tonight, here this morning, that have come from a background that has been solid socioeconomically, that has been good, solid family, good overall environment. Well, you know, you've had an advantage. You've had an advantage, and you're getting ready to graduate from college, you're beginning this next phase of your life. But be appreciative of the fact that you've had that advantage. That's a wonderful head start. That's a great thing for you. Take advantage of that. And remember, don't be afraid to give back to the people that have taken care of you up until now. You owe it to them. You began with a head start, make something of yourself. Now, there are also many of you that didn't have that opportunity. There are many of you here that come from broken homes. There are many of you have single-parent families. There are many people come from a tough socioeconomic background. I know there are some people in here whose parents have been in jail, so addictions. Well, you didn't have it that easy. But the reality is, you're out of that environment now. Now, they will always be your family. I'm not suggesting that's not the case. And that'll always be your hometown and your community. I'm not suggesting that's always the case. And you'll know where you came from. But what I'm making very, very clear, you have already changed your environment. You're graduating from Coastal Carolina, and you've done it through adversity. So you know what? It's okay to have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder. That's fine. You deserve that. To go out and make something of yourself. Don't ever go back to BAM. Take responsibility for yourself. If you're not going after it and things are not going well, don't ever say, well, you know, I came from a tough background. Once you make that excuse, you're giving yourself you're subconsciously letting yourself off the hook. Again, BAM, take responsibility for yourself. Don't let that happen. And go on and make a difference. You've already accomplished so very, very much. And the last principle is love. Now, I'm not talking about, I define love, by the way, as the commitment to the well-being of others. I'm not talking about making love. I'm talking about the power of love. And again, the power of love, commitment to the well-being of others. Now, you can see that on campus. You see that with relationships that you've made over time. You see it with the faculty has relationships. You can see it if you're on a team. You see it in your club. You can see that. You can kind of have a feel for that. But I think where I think you see and feel it the most, I think you really truly see and feel it the most is when you kind of take a look at family. And I want to share a couple of things that are personal in my life and my family's life that kind of illustrate this. First of all, when I was 13 years old, my mom had gotten sick. She was in the hospital, and she had never been in the hospital before. And I noticed my dad was crying. Now, again, remember, 7 of us, 2 bedrooms, not a whole lot of privacy here. By the way, my dad died a few years ago of Alzheimer's. I've never seen my father cry. He's crying this day. So I said, Dad, what's the matter? He says, I'm worried about Mom. I went to bed that night, and it hit me, Dad's worried about Mom. I said, this got to be really, really serious. I mean, this could be fatal. This could be death. I could lose my mom. My mom was an Irish immigrant. All she had were her 5 kids. And she loved us unconditionally, and she totally, absolutely supported us. But we were it for her. We were it for her. And it hit me. I said, what happens if my mom dies? You know what? I think I'm a tough guy. I've never told my mother I loved her. And I remember that night not being able to sleep. And I remember starting to pray. I said, God, just please, you bring Mom home. And I promise, I will make up for that. I'll make up for that. Mom did come home, and it did make up for that. Now you fast forward. Now we have the 9/11. The setting in 9/11 is I've just taken the Ameritrade job, which is headquartered in Omaha. I just moved from New York City to Omaha, Nebraska. Okay. Merrill Lynch Global Headquarters, about 200 yards from the World Trade Center. My apartment is about 200 yards from the World Trade Center. I've got 3 kids. 3 of my kids live in New York City. 2 of them actually work at Merrill Lynch. I get up in the morning. I watch the planes flying into the building. Now, I just left that exact spot. And I have my loved ones there. I've got my kids there. I've got so many friends and relationships there. And this is going on. This is an incredible event. I'm pretty good, and you should try to do this too. You can't worry too much about things you really have no control over. And while I was certainly concerned about what was going on in New York City at the time, I didn't have any control there. But in Ameritrade, we had our own employees. We had our own clients, their assets. We had to make sure they were protected, and we went into emergency mode. So later on, my daughter, Kim, calls me and says, Dad, I know you probably got a lot of things going on, but I want you to know I just called Kevin and Kara, and they're both a bit stressed out, but they're both okay. I said, thank you, Kim. I really appreciate that. Then a few hours later, I get a call from Kim. He says, Dad, I just spoke to Kara. They've evacuated her. She's in Jersey City, but she's okay. But the last time anybody saw Kevin, he was going over to the site to see if he could help out. Dad, have you heard from Kevin? I said, no, Kim. By this time, the towers had collapsed. And I remember spending that day with a very real realization that there was a good chance I'd lost my son. Now, what I found interesting was there was a little bit of a sense of peace I had, in the sense that if I did lose him, there was literally absolutely nothing that I would tell him that I hadn't already told him. And the reason for that was because of that episode I had with my mother when I was 13 years old. A few hours later, we get a call, said, Dad, this is Kevin. So the power behind this, the power of love, again, it's not about you. It's about others. You're going through the blues. It's not about you. It's about others. So those are the 4 principles. So for me, I really meant what I said in the beginning. This, for me, is an incredible, incredible honor that I will remember my entire lifetime. As far as all of you go, you are graduating from Coastal Carolina. You are well prepared now to go out and live this next phase of your life. So what I would ask you, the challenge I would give you is as follows. You take what you've learned in your life, take what you've learned in Coastal, take your degree, but add to that the concept, the principle behind BAM. You stand on your own 2 feet, you take responsibility for yourself. You treat others with dignity and respect, you live the consequence of your actions. You're dedicated in the sense that you can work as hard as you can to be the very best you can be. You're courageous enough to have the guts to do what you believe is the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, it really is about the power of love, and it's about the impact you have on others. And if you can connect those things, I guarantee you that you will lay a foundation upon which you can build your life, be a leader, separate yourself from others, be incredibly proud of what you've been able to do, what you've been able to accomplish. It's a differentiator. So you're ready to go. So go out there. Give it everything you've got. Don't be afraid. Make a difference. Stand on your own 2 feet. Do everything you possibly can to be the very, very best you can be. You're going to have an impact on others, and you're going to wind up incredibly happy and proud of yourself. From me to you, congratulations, all of you, and God bless you all.